Hello and welcome to the Caithness Amateur Dram Antics Society tasting. And this evening I'm going to taste two whiskies from Clynelish, both distilled in 1995. One of which I can tell you a lot more about than the other. The first one is the Whiskies of Scotland Clynelich 1995, bottled at 50.7%. And the other is a signatory vintage Clynelish 1995, bottled at 54.6%. It's actually a 23-year-old. So the first one is this one, and you'll notice I put it into a little sample bottle. And I hear a lot about oxidization and whiskey. Once you open them, the whiskey tends to oxidize. That perhaps does happen, but I think more what happens is the whiskey. There's a loss of ethanol, and when you open it, you lose a bit of ethanol, and every time you open the bottle, there'll be more loss of ethanol. And so the idea is if you put it into a smaller container as you go down the bottle, so maybe a half bottle, quarter bottle. And then in this case, I came across two samples that I'd put, two sample bottles I put this in. I've had this, I think, for maybe 3 years. And what it was, Whiskies of Scotland do small, this is not a Whiskies of Scotland bottle, but they do small bottles like this, 20 cl bottles. This is actually Glen Grant from Cadenhead shop. But what you find is that because I put this into these sample bottles, I threw the original bottle away and lost all the stuff on it that told me all about it. But from memory, I kind of pieced it back together, and also from smelling and tasting. So Clynelish is all the way from Brora, and Clynelish opened in 1819, then closed from 1931 until 1960. In 1967, Diageo, or as it was then, United Distillers, built a brand new distillery and called it Clynelish. They closed the old distillery but reopened it again in 1968 and called it Brora. Brora, of course, closed, but they've actually just reopened it again and started producing it again. Brora is considered a wonderful whiskey from the past, but it's going to be available again. And at auction, the prices of Brora are quite credible. I saw, I think it was about a 50 or 60-year-old Brora in a bar in Inverness, and I asked the barman how much a dram was, and he said a dram of that would be £795 a dram, and I think the bottle was unopened actually. So Clynelish is considered a classic whiskey with a waxy texture, and for aficionados that waxy texture is very important. One year they threw all of the gunk that builds up in the fence receiver out when they did their annual deep clean. But when they started distilling again, they found they'd lost all the waxiness, and there was an outcry. So now, when they do their annual deep clean, they keep all the fusile gunk to one side and put it back in the fence receiver. So this one was distilled in 1995 and bottled, I think, 25 or so years later. I'm fairly sure it was matured in an ex-bourbon cask. I'm just going to put my microphone in. Just a couple of seconds, just whilst we do this. See why we're called the Amateur Dramatic Society. There we go. So let's see what we have here. Clynelish 1995 Whiskies of Scotland, ex-bourbon cask at 50.7%. Well, let's see first of all. So I think this is about 25 or so years old, just by when I bought it. And there is only one very small review of this online by Duncan Taylor. Duncan Taylor, it's actually Scotch Malts Direct, I think, is the company, but Duncan Taylor are actually the overseeing company. And there's nice tears in this, lovely viscousy tears. It's very fruity, with a nice balance. And it's green fruits, apples and pears. It's an untypical Clynelish. I don't get the candle wax on the nose. Much more on the fruit, less on the wax. It's citrusy, very coastal, and very intense. It's vanilla, malty with a touch of wood. It's very clean, with lots of fruity sweetness, pear drops, melon and green apples. And there's grassy notes as well. Honey, lavender, even a little smoke. If I was given this blind, I might get the area just about, but I think I'd be going down the route of Balblair with that fruity coastal, and there's no waxiness here. We'll try the mouth. It's quite dry and crisp. You get a little of the waxiness on the palate, like green extra virgin oil, and dry orchard fruits, some plums even. It's quite rich. Doesn't really hit the distillery profile. It's got a sweet entry with some tropical fruits again, like the Balblair again. And it gets spicy and oaky, but very pleasant, very punchy. Got a curd-like texture. Coconut, lemon, banana, vanilla, cinnamon, a smooth oakiness at the background. On the finish, on the swallow, I get some of the coastal notes Clynelish is known for. It's a good length, And there's a tiny note of salt at the end. Peppery, woody, and waxy. And the wax and the pepper remain on the palate for a while. Spices, pepper, clove, and it's sweet, honey-like, and it's got a slightly soft, woody finish with lots of vanilla and some tobacco at the end there. I'm going to try 5 drops of water in this. There's a little Scotch mist there. And now it gets more herbal and camphoric. Still very intense. But it's a little more maritime than citrusy now. I'm going to try them out. And again, that herbal, camphoric, but it's intense. It's a little less sweet on the entry and perhaps a little more restrained. And again, more maritime than citrusy. Not as peppery or oaky, but that's still there. On the second sip with water, the citrus fruits reappear. Lemon and lime, lemongrass, green apple glazed in butter, sugar beets, straw, and freshly cut wood branches. Uh, yeah. And the finish is great with water. It gets longer. And the remaining flavours are a little more subtle. So, with this one, there's only hints of Clynelish wax, pitchy vanilla, we've got bright medium mouthfeel, and a lot of oak. It's a beautiful Clynelish without waxy notes and full and intense nose. And the cask has done a lot here. After all, the malt is, 25 years old perhaps. Nevertheless, there is still much interesting left over. It's fantastically full in taste and harmonious. And it almost clings to the cheeks and doesn't want to disappear anytime soon. So I'm going to cleanse my palate. and we'll move on. So, the other whiskey tonight is the Signatory Vintage Clynelish 1995, 23-year-old, bottled at 54.6%. And as a contrast, this one was distilled on the. You get a nice tin with the Signatory Vintage, with full information on the label at the front. And it's a lovely bottle, a lovely bottle. Again, full information on the label on the front. So this was distilled on the 21st of November 1995 and put into a refill sherry butt, cask number 11242, and bottled on the 13th of June 2019. And this is bottle number 536 out of 592 bottles. And it's got a lovely, lovely cork. And it's a real pouring bottle. Big lip in it, but it feels something special. So let's see where we go with this one. Well, you can see it's a bit darker than the other one, and that's nice tears on it. Let's see how this goes. It's salty, wood ash, orange peel, caramelized toffee, and toasted bread. It's meaty, yeasty dough, and hints of gingers. So it's a dark, heavy, fruity nose. There's perhaps a little sulphur in this, but you don't notice the 54.6%. It's a cinnamon baked apple, an apple strudel, and a little spicy. Dark chocolate covered prunes and figs. And it's only then, after you've been in it for a while, that you get the characteristic mineral notes and a little wax from the burning of a candle. But they're not candles burning in the church. It's like they've been stuck in a dessert, in the cake. And they burn there because these smells are mixed. It's got a dense, solid, nutty, earthy aroma with berries and cognac notes of aged wood. And in the background there's some vegetables and even a farmy note. And I would say the aroma, the nose of this is much closer to Campbelltown malts than to the typical Clynelish. You get that cherry jam and strawberry compote. And there's an underlying mustiness, like warehouse funk, alongside warm plastic peaches and dry wood. And then you get a slight alcohol spice, black pepper, And as it opens to the air, it reveals toffee apples, gingerbread, chocolate buttons, fudge, candle wax, and raisins. I'm trying to mouth this. And now, there is the oily, waxy leatheriness, but also orange marmalade, pears, there's salt there, ginger, and a little brine. And the raspberries, red and black currants, dark chocolate, and dark cocoa powder. But the waxy notes are hardly noticeable. That could be the dryness. The alcohol is very well integrated, yet you don't really notice it at 56.4%. Hot varnish, burnt sugar as well as burnt plum jam, which is splashed onto the stove and burned. There's there's buckwheat honey on the combs. And then there's that extra spice kick. Uh, Most notably, raw ginger and cinnamon sticks. Pronounced notes of toffee apple and honeycomb toffee cinders, along with pomegranate, red apples, and raisins that have been reduced. And the finish is medium long, with a sort of tobacco bitterness, briefcase leathery, cane sugar sweetness, and a briny saltiness with some pines and nuttiness, and dryness that's still with that dark cocoa powder, mainly dark bitter chocolate and oak, plus a very light wax, but then a lot of pepper and very spicy dark chocolate and lingering spiciness. But the spirit's usual waxiness isn't over noticeable. I'm going to add 5 drops of water to this. And there's good Scotch mist on this. So water brings out some of the waxiness, and pear juice, and maybe some engine oil, the Clynelish distilled, which is good. Orange, blueberries, It's complex but very cohesive. It's quite fresh and it's back on a duo of earthy and aromatic woody tones. Walnuts, humus, and then wax. Touches of pencil shavings and cough syrup. Water enhances the sweetness, and that brings forward notes of butterscotch, angel delight, green melon, and apples, along with prune juice. And that spice that was in the undiluted dram is noticeably reduced now. And there's some notes of fudge, caramel, and brown sugar. Try them out. And water brings out tobacco here. It's leatherier now, uh, with a sweetness of oranges and saltiness of before fading out to a bit of tannin. It tastes powerful. Tannin, pepper, notes of dark chocolate on spices with bitterness. It's like cocoa dusted apricots, peaches, a mix of apple desserts, apple tart tatin, stewed apples, and apple crumble. But the spice is in better balance now, and the mouthfeel is relatively unchanged. Notable notes include ginger, chocolate, and brown sugar. And the finish is long lasting, sweet, honeycomb, dried fruits, some chocolate and spices, and wood. And the finish is less spicy. And overall, this dram has taken water well. Well, this whiskey needs time to breathe, water to shine, and most important, patience to sip it. It's a beautiful sherry matured Clynelish that doesn't crush the distillate, and it's a pleasant dram that takes water well. I have to say, it doesn't taste particularly like a typical Clynelish. So, two whiskies, and each of these drams are very pleasant. They belie the waxy coastal notes I typically get from Clynelish. For Clynelish aficionados, they would be an interesting experience. And for me, they are a lesson in taking each dram as it comes. Thank you for listening.